if the Silent Hill 2 remake has taught us anything, we really need to stop putting creators on a pedestal. I said this about like Lisa, the Dingaling, the guy who made Lisa, right? I've said this for a long time. I found it really odd how people seem to present him as the more based alternative to Toby Fox when really they're basically the exact same person, right? You're talking about like woke, left leaning, like just soy boy, like Yuri consuming retards who couldn't program a game to save their lives that both ripped off Earthbound and produced like absolute slop. But for some reason, like certain people who hated Toby Fox like clung on to the Dingaling as like the based alternative. Like, oh, this is what a real Earthbound spiritual successor looks like. But yeah, they were surprised when he came out and like spoke out against Trump and spoke out against men. And they tried to make excuses for him. They tried to do this thing where like, oh, his dad died and that's why he's antsy. Like, oh man, he used to be cool. Oh, he's such a Chad. And it was just all a big cope, right? Not only was Dingaling a complete beta male soy boy cuck who did not produce a good game, but also he was never based, right? Like again, there was nothing about this individual that was worthy of any kind of attention or respect or praise or hype, but people like projected this weird image onto him that didn't fit the reality, right? Again, he was just a guy, right? It's it's not you're not special for producing a video game. Okay, that needs to be understood, right? You're not important. You're not the protagonist. You're some loser just coding something in your basement. Like, no, you are not special. And the same could be true for creators of even iconic games. People like Shigeru Miyamoto, people like John Romero, and especially the Silent Hill people, right? These guys have spent the entire build up to Silent Hill 2 remake, like, oh man, it's so good, guys. Like, oh, we delivered so much. Like, this is the stuff we always wanted to do. If the technology allowed us to, like, we were involved in every aspect of the process. Like, this is better than the original, guys. Like, please, please, please support this. Like, it was. I said the same thing about like Resident Evil 4 remake when like Shinji Mikami tried to shill for that, but like this is a complete and total cope. Absolutely nobody in the Silent Hill 2 community actually thought this remake would be good. But these parasites seriously thought that by going on Twitter and talking up the remake, seriously using these guys as a tool to get people excited about the game, like, oh, we did all of this with the creators' input, right? This is exactly what they wanted, dudes. Like, it's completely at odds with the reality of the situation, right? Is that these guys are old, talentless hacks who haven't produced anything of value in like 20 years. Okay, these guys have been coasting off the success and enduring legacy of Silent Hill 2 for at least a decade, probably longer, right? And to me, the fact that they have to like come out here and like shill for the remake is a real testament to the fact that they're not producing anything new. They're not doing anything of value, right? Nobody actually cares about anything they worked on outside of Silent Hill 2, right? It'd be like if like I don't know, Miyamoto made Super Mario Bros. 2 or something, and everybody was just like, "Oh man, that's such a deep game. It's all about Mario and his desire to have friends that help him on his adventures." Like, oh, and then like Miyamoto just never produced Super Mario Bros. 3, and just coasted off like this weird idea that people had over Super Mario Bros. 2. Again, same general principle, right? There's a reason why the people at Nintendo constantly put out new and interesting games all the time, while people like this try and sell you on Silent Hill 2 again. It's because they've never produced anything good, right? They're not capable of it. Silent Hill is and always has been a fluke. A fact that is the fact that Silent Hill 4, The Room, bombed the way it did should be a testament to that, right? Nobody, if anything, like the only Silent Hill game that feels relevant in the current year is 2, right? Because it's such an iconic horror game. Like I've seen so many people over the years like shit talk like 1, 3, and 4 because of like things like the fixation on the cult and some of the lore changes. Like the view among Americans is that like Silent Hill 2 is by far the best one because it's like essentially a character study on the James Sunderland character, right? Like again, people have worshipped this game to an obsessive degree, and as a result of that, have given a lot more praise and attention to the people behind it than they probably deserve, right? Like again, mediocre creators can put out legitimately great iconic products, right? Again, because they are creators. They are putting their effort into things. They are doing something. And not necessarily they're not necessarily like some savants or like someone worthy of respect. Like they just made something that people like. That's it. It's not like it's not special, it's not interesting. And what's more, you shouldn't like uh listen to them when they try and like sell you on something like this, right? Like again, like one of the examples I go back to, like George Lucas, right? What is everyone doing now with Star Wars? Like, oh man, if George was in charge, none of this would be happening. Like, in regards to like modern Star Wars, like the fucker produced the prequels, the fucker produced the EU, right? The fucker was involved with all these terrible video games. Like, again, my opinion, Star Wars fell off with like Return of the Jedi, right? Like again, no new plot elements introduced. All the characters just like it's not interesting, it's not fun to watch, right? It's a rehash of the first movie in a lot of ways. The Ewoks, like Return of the Jedi, it's not bad, but to put it up there with like the iconic first two is just sacrilegious, honestly. Like it's appalling. And plenty of people will tell you that. And then like the prequels, like again, George Lucas had all the money and resources and time in the world to produce good Star Wars products. And he never, ever managed it. Ever. Like everything that came out that was good was like a fluke that happened like in spite of him, right? People who were passionate and put together like some good stuff based on the setting, like yeah, yeah, it happens, right? But yeah, what is he doing now? He still has a lot of sway at Disney, right? Like he's still involved with the process. He's still going to events and like making these commentary videos, like making commentaries and like making statements. Like what is he doing now in this like dark age of Star Wars? He's going out and shilling for Bob Iger, shilling for the message, like spending his last years doing what I think he's always been doing behind the scenes is that pushing for communism to take over America, right? Him, James Cameron, they're all the fucking same. Like, they all do this. They all deeply detest America, the American people, our ideas, our ideals, uh, our religion, like they have contempt for all of it, right? And they make it really clear if you actually listen to them in interviews when they actually talk like candidly about stuff, how much they venerate like terrorism against the American state. Like Star Wars is meant to be a critique of the American empire, right? Like again, it's just it was always fucking woke. Always. And yet there was this like very strong unwillingness from the community to admit that like it's always been this way. I would argue the same for like Doctor Who and a lot of these other like all these other properties is that like the creators are not people that you should revolve your entire lives around. Okay? And I think with like Silent Hill 2, like when the big cope, going into this, like, oh, but the original creators like the remake. Like, you really shouldn't care what they say, right? You really shouldn't care about that. Because the only people who should like care how a game looks and how it plays are the fans, right? people, creators think their work is like the greatest ever, right? Like it's like, oh, I'm so good at what I do. Like again, they're not the audience, so they don't really have much of an input on like what's good and what isn't, right? The fact that like so many people like have to like point to Shinji Mikami and like the Silent Hill guys, well, they liked the remake, so that justifies it. No, like the reality is the remakes of pretty much every property ever. Like I can't think of like any like non-Nintendo remakes that are good. Like remakes need to be banned because they are never improvement over the original. They take time and resources away from developing new entries, and it just leads to this like inevitable realization that like the remake was just a big waste of everyone's time, right? And I do think the Silent Hill 2 remake, in spite of like everything it's going through with like the shield campaign and like things like this, like it is a disaster, right? Nobody's really happy with this other than people looking to exploit the Silent Hill 2 IP. Just like how people like me who were critical of like the Resident Evil 4 remake were drowned out by people who like worshipped it. Look at what happened with our guy Crobcat, the myth, the man, the legend, the one YouTuber who actually dared stand up against like the Resident Evil 4 remake like hype train. The one person who put together like an extremely comprehensive video detailing all the things the remake did wrong in a cohesive way, like he got screamed down by the community because they couldn't handle the fact that he was criticizing the remake to Resident Evil 4. Again, there was no critical thought put into it. There was no respect to the original. There was no real like appreciation for like the effort Crobcat put in. Like there was no like real consideration that like maybe he's right. No, we're just gonna scream at him until he takes the video down. I think like he just ended up putting it back up under a different video title. But like my point is that like the fan culture for propping up these like terrible remakes is disgusting, right? The people who enable it are disgusting, right? The creators who like support this kind of thing for their own ends, they should be condemned by the community. And that is what I'm calling for, like in regards to this, right? All of these Silent Hill people, everyone involved with the remake, like all the creators who shill for it, they should be disregarded going forward, right? Like they need to be told that they can't do this. They can't just attention whore like they have been doing. Like that guy who tried to say like, "Oh, I wish I never created Pyramid Head." Like clearly just I don't know, like looking for attention. But again, it's just like we do need to address like the creator worship needs to stop, right? People need to really stop and think about what these people are doing and really evaluate just the actual product. Really come to terms with the fact that like there is no possible way for a Silent Hill 2 remake to be as iconic as the original.